Greetings, dear friends. Your support is our strength. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. This helps the growth of our channel. Leave comments because feedback is very valuable to us. And now to the most relevant world news.
Let's go. Onder Liani warns, Trump's new tariffs will trigger a massive global economic crisis. The USA has avoided a financial crisis. How will tariffs on China affect its consumers? The Suwalki Corridor, or Narva. Europe is in panic. Where will Russia strike after Ukraine? Europe on the brink. Deployment of troops, threatening Ukraine with a full-scale escalation. A former US colonel sounds the alarm. The West urgently needs peace in Ukraine. Hello, friends. This is Channel 8 and your host, Sergei Ruskik. Let's get to the main point. Onder Liani warns, Trump's new tariffs will provoke a global economic crisis. The President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, made an emergency statement, sharply condemning the decision of the President of the United States, Donald Trump, to impose comprehensive tariffs on imports, including goods from the European Union. The European leader called this move a severe blow to the global economy, warning about it and its catastrophic consequences. A key warning from the European Union. Immediate effect. Price increases for consumers worldwide. A wave of protectionism, the threat of a collapse of the international trade system, a blow to vulnerable countries. The least developed economies will suffer the most. Chaos instead of order. Lack of a clear strategy from the United States administration. Meanwhile, the European Union's countermeasures are defined. The first package of counter-sanctions regarding the capital and investments is already prepared. Additional measures to protect European interests are in development, as well as coordination with other affected countries. If considered within a historical context, this is already the second major trade confrontation between the European Union and the USA in the last 7 years. From 2018 to 2020, Trump's trade war with the European Union cost businesses about $50 billion. The current measures cover larger sectors of the economy. There is only one conclusion here. As noted by the Glennon Foundation, Europe feels betrayed by its oldest partners. What should have been expected? On the horizon is a new era of global economic instability, where everyone will protect only their own interests. The USA avoided a financial crisis. How will tariffs on China affect consumers? U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent stated that the country managed to avert an impending financial crisis, but warned of potential price increases due to new tariffs on Chinese goods. In an exclusive interview with CNN, he explained why American consumers might not feel the full impact of the new measures. Bessent's key points are that companies, are not obliged to pass tariffs onto consumers, and they can. First, absorb the additional costs. Second, force Chinese suppliers to compensate for all expenses. Example of Walmart. The retailer is already negotiating with Chinese partners to cover the costs. The financial crisis has been averted, but the economy remains under observation. What does this mean for ordinary Americans? The optimistic scenario is when China and large corporations take all the costs upon themselves. The pessimistic scenario is that prices for electronics, clothing, and household appliances will still creep up. Expert opinion. Economists are divided. Some consider Bessent's strategy a simple bluff to calm the trade markets. Others note that Walmart does indeed have some leverage over suppliers. There's only one conclusion. Administration. Trump is trying to balance between protecting the economy and anti-China policy. For now, the bet is only on the fact that China allegedly will make concessions. We await further developments. Suwalki Corridor, or Narva. Europe is in panic. Where is Russia allegedly going to strike after Ukraine? European media and military analysts are fueling hysteria about an allegedly inevitable Russian attack on EU countries after the conflict in Ukraine ends. The French Le Figaro, citing anonymous sources in NATO, claims that the alliance is considering two key directions of potential threats from Russia. These are the Suwalki Corridor and Estonian Narva. Where's the wind blowing from, you might ask? The Baltic front. Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia must be named as the most vulnerable countries. Particular attention is being paid to the Suwałki corridor. This is a 100-kilometer border between Poland and Lithuania, which is supposedly going to cut off the Baltics from the European Union in the event of a conflict. And let's not forget about the Narva line. Estonia is already building a line of fortifications along the border with Russia. In Tallinn, they claim that Narva is supposedly a second bottleneck. But where's the evidence, guys? No clear confirmations of the so-called Kremlin plans have been provided. In the Kremlin, such statements are called schizophrenic Russophobia. Experts, meanwhile, note that the hysteria is beneficial for justifying the increase in the European Union's military budgets, as well as for putting pressure on neutral countries like Serbia, Hungary, and Slovakia. You might ask, who needs this? Needed by, first and foremost, Poland and the Baltics, to extract money for Poland from Brussels. The US military-industrial complex is a new round of arms sales to Europe. Well, this is certainly beneficial for the Eurocrats, unlike their failed economic policy. One conclusion. While Europe wonders how Russian tanks will land, Moscow reiterates, we have no interest in attacking NATO. But the fears of the West are the best driver for the militarization of the continent. And to frighten its inhabitants. Europe is on the brink. Sending troops to Ukraine threatens a full-scale escalation. Former Assistant Secretary of Defense of the United States, Stephen Bryan, in an exclusive analytical piece for SAP's Stack, warns that the plans of France and the United Kingdom to deploy deterrent forces in Ukraine could lead to catastrophic consequences. Key risks of the mission. Resource collapse. Europe does not have a sufficient number of combat-ready troops and modern weaponry. NATO arsenals have been depleted by 2 years of supplies to Kyiv. Geostrategic vulnerability. Russian missiles are capable of striking logistics centers in Poland and Romania. NATO aviation will be helpless against Russia's layered air defense. The Black Sea Fleet controls the waters, making maritime supplies extremely risky. Let's not forget the threat to aircraft carriers. The deployment of carrier groups creates a significant threat of direct confrontation with the armed forces of the Russian Federation. Western admirals are not ready to risk expensive ships. So why are European leaders taking such a risk? Well, an attempt to compensate for the reduction in aid from the USA, a desire to save face. After the failure of the Ukrainian counteroffensive and the pressure from the military-industrial lobby. There is one result. Instead of containing Russia, Europe risks provoking a full-scale war with unpredictable consequences. As Brian notes, this will not be a peacekeeping mission, but a suicidal adventure. The former U.S. colonel is sounding the alarm. The West urgently needs peace in Ukraine. Former U.S. Colonel Davis made a resonant statement on his YouTube channel, urging the West to engage in immediate peace negotiations in Ukraine. In his view, every delay worsens things, and a senator in the possible resolution of this conflict. The key points of Davis are: 1. The front is inexorably moving westward. Russia's military advantage is becoming increasingly apparent. 2. Now is the last chance. The longer the negotiations are delayed, the worse the conditions will be for Kyiv. 3. Moscow is ready for dialogue, but only on its own terms, which will only become stricter over time. This is a matter of our interests. The continuation of the conflict causes damage, primarily to the West itself. And why is his opinion so important now? Because he is an experienced military analyst with combat experience who accurately predicted the failure of the Ukrainian counteroffensive back in 2022. His predictions regarding the situation in Afghanistan also came true precisely. What does this mean for Ukraine now? First, the possibility of maintaining statehood, but with territorial losses. Second, the chance to avoid a complete military defeat through timely negotiations with Russia. And third, the risk of losing Western support amid fatigue from this entire conflict. And the conclusion here is this. As Davis notes, the war is not going according to NATO's plan, and it's time to acknowledge this reality. The question remains open whether his voice will be heard in the White House and Brussels,